And so it doesn't mean that I don't have to follow all the rules. I surely do that, but I do want to be careful because the person who's in this job has to run for the position, and you're out there campaigning, telling people what you believe and how you believe it, and hopefully that that's consistent with where the city's going. But we have to kind of stay in our lane as to what exactly that role really is as a sheriff, and I surely try to do that. But I do think as this situation arose, at the end of the day, the council clearly funds and can order things through the sheriff's office. But I was concerned. I approached Metro Legal and said, can the city council force me to take over a facility if I'm not willing and able to do that at this point? And legally, the answer was no. The only reason I said that wasn't because I didn't want to do it. It was because I needed the time to transition into the facility in a responsible way. And so Councilmember Vircher is right. And I hope, like I said, I hope you would feel that we want to work to make it happen. But at the end of the day, there is a line of distinction out there.
Yeah, Sheriff, I was making that point because we have a lot of new caucus members. And thank you for bringing up that history with Freddie O'Connell's. Because I believe we all agreed at the time that we would review this contract annually. And to Madam Chair's point, and I stated this as it related to Councilwoman Benedict's efforts in this, that the caucus was not included in any of the conversations in the press release as it related to rehashing this effort that I thought as a body, the prior body, we had already worked in tandem with your office. And I don't want to say we had a consensus as it related to moving forward with this contract. And I believe it was to review it annually. I can't recall because, like you stated earlier, so much has transpired in the city since all of this. And then I'll say this too, and then I'll be done, Madam Chair. As caucus members and as legislators, and what a lot of caucus members may or may not be aware of, when these conversations were had, the fiscal environment of the city was and still is delicate, and the sheriff's office made concessions. I think you helped me both budget years, Sheriff, and you can correct me on that too. You helped me out with my budgets both years. But I say that to say, as caucus members and as legislators, I know this is emotional and in the political climate, but we have to make sure that we are not leading with emotion, and that our decisions that we do, we're not making people worse off. Does any of us want to see profits off of people that look like us being in prison? Absolutely not. So that's not what I'm stating. But as legislators, we have to weigh the risk and the liability. And I know that's a little redundant, and I'll clarify. At the end of the day, we are responsible for the overall health of every citizen in Nashville. And we have to ask ourselves, if we move away from the contract, and I don't know what the future plans may be, and the sheriff does a great job, and like every other agency in Metro, where we ask them to do more with less, that needs to be in the back of our minds too, because we all know resources are scarce. I mean, as a city, we can't even get trash collected, right? And not saying that services or anything like that would falter up under the sheriff, and that's not on him, because we're putting him in this predicament. We have to be mindful that if we're going to move forward towards this, we need to be willing to give him all the resources that he needs. Because right now, up under the current model, and I will publicly state, is not broken. For some, is more philosophical than correction, right? We have to be prepared to give the sheriff's office all the resources that they need so that this is successful and we're not making it worse off. Right now, we have no liability. And Sheriff, you can correct me on that too, because I'm not looking at I don't have any of the documentation in front of me, but I do know as the current model as a city, we really don't have full liability, and that would change if we were to move forward away from the contract. Not that it negates us from any responsibility, but as legislators, we just need to be prepared for um, any additional costs to move us away from the current model. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Virtue. I appreciate that. Thank you, Sheriff Hall. I know that Councilmember Porterfield has a question, I believe, or comment. She also is going to be leaving soon, so as soon as she finishes her question or comment and Sheriff Hall responds, she's going to speak on the Metro employment data. And if you would also, Councilmember Porterfield, speak on the New American, we were going to talk about that during the demands to the mayor from the caucus, but if you want to specifically address that at that time, it's perfectly fine with me.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity to address the body very quickly before I jump off. Sheriff Hall, my only question I just want to clarify, and thank you for all of the historical information that you shared with us. If you could clarify, as it stands now, with Core Civic requesting to pull out or saying that they are ready to be done providing the services to the city, will you all be ready to take over the facility in the 87 days?
I'd say what I have a lot of pride, and so we're working very hard to do that. I think we will be ready. There are some exceptions to the rules, and I'm just being honest with you. This afternoon, I was meeting with the union because a lot of the employees that are out there, just to be honest with you, are doing a really good job. We need employees. We need them. I mean, these are people on the rank and line levels doing a lot of work, and so the point we will be ready, and I'm going to need some exceptions. I've communicated this to the finance office and others. For example, just to make this simple, there are a lot of computers out there in that facility. They're owned by Core Civic. These are just computers in officer stations and so forth. We need to be able to use those or purchase our own in the government. I've been here 30 years. I'm not trying to criticize people, but it takes longer than 87 days to get a computer, to buy them, order them, procure it, do all that. So we're trying to jump through some hoops to get those types of things ready. But I have confidence in my staff. We're going to be ready to go. And I have communicated with their employees. I've communicated with their staff. We're working very, very hard, even with the union, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I have confidence that we'll be ready.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I do have to hop off in 2 minutes. So the two concerns that I had, I'll address the Metro Employment Data org charts first. Madam Chair, if it is the will of the caucus, I am requesting that we work with the various departments to ask for organizational charts that are reflective of the employment data. And this may be something that we already have and have access to. This may be something that needs to be looked at under the newly created diversity position that was allotted for in the budget. But if we can make sure that we get some type of employment data for Metro government that shows the organizational chart with the breakdown of the demographics, ethnicity, and gender, there have been lots of conversations and lots of concerns about disproportionality with Metro employees, and that while there is some diversity, the diversity tends to be in some of those low-level, entry-level positions, and that minorities and women have not had the opportunity to necessarily advance within some departments. So there are some departments that are very heavy with minorities on the lower end entry level positions, but they're not having those higher salary positions and are not having opportunities to get those positions. So I think that it would behoove us as a body to have that information so that we can ensure that there is diversity and equity in metro government. The other concern that I wanted to make sure when we are talking about our demands to the mayor, it is paramount that we make sure that the Office of New Americans, that we get an update on what's happening and that this position is filled. This is something that we've been discussing at this point since I believe August or September. And we need to make sure that that is filled in addition to the two newly created positions that we got approved in this particular budget. I just want to make sure that that does not fall by the wayside and that that position is filled. And with that, Madam Chair, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I will come back and watch the rest of the meeting once it's posted. So thank you again.
You're welcome. I would like to say that I do believe that Metro Social Services has some employment data as well as HR, but we can reach out to them and see if we can get that information. And I'm really glad you talked about the demands and not waiting for so long, because that's been part of our problem with the mayor in terms of communication with the Minority Caucus. So those demands that we've made, we would like to have some update on them and some acknowledgement that they are a part of his priority list. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Thank you. Are there any other questions for Sheriff Hall?
This is Swara.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, and thank you, Sheriff, for all. I think that you've given a lot of insights and a lot of information, and I'm also glad that you are ready to take this over. I know that it was the way everything went down. It's not the way you had envisioned it, but I think that when it comes to change, it's never an easy thing. I want to confirm with you, because I think sometimes you get lost in the conversation, that aside from the setup or the initial fee, this would not create ongoing additional liability to Metro. My understanding is that the state will be reimbursing us the same rates they were going to reimburse Core Civic, and so going forward, there will be no loss, because I think we're talking about liability and cost to Metro. My understanding is that based on what you just found out, that is the case. So other than the initial cost, there will be no annual going forward cost. Is that correct?
Yes. So, well, thank you very much. And let me a couple different issues here. When we say liability, though, there is legal liability that the city has surely taken on. I mean, tonight as we sit here, there is a company that is responsible for some 500 or 600 people in their custody, and the legal liability for all sorts of challenges to that, they take on that as a company. And so when they're gone, Metro government, myself and Metro government, then assume that liability. So there's no doubt that there is an increased liability to the city, which oftentimes is not unusual in this line of work. There's lawsuits and there's challenges to various things. That's not unusual. And so that does shift to Metro. And I think we have to realize that the state really doesn't take on any of that. Right now, the private company has it. And if we take it over, we would have it. And so there is that for sure. I think the dollars and cents budgeting of such a thing, or the cost to the city, I think you're very, very right. I mean, the upfront startup cost somewhere between $4 and $5 million. The reason we don't know that number is it has a lot to do with, and this is the frustration. I agree with you, change is difficult, but it's also dangerous to not change the appropriate way. And this wasn't the way to do it. Both from Core Civic's perspective, I don't like what they did. It wasn't the right thing to do. And quite frankly, the city, we could have handled it better. Myself and some council members that I think are friends of mine, but I would say we could have handled it all better. We should be taking it over in July of 2022, giving everyone the time we need to do it. But that's not going to happen. We're going to be ready to do it. The cost is upfront cost, and I think it's marginal as we go forward. The reason I can't tell you exactly is there are certain programs that we provide to our inmates that we believe are important to that population, that if the state doesn't believe they should be paying for those programs, they may not pay us back for the amount of services we provide to what we would call their inmates. But right now, you and I as local taxpayers are paying for it anyway. We just believe it's important to do a variety of alcohol and drug and mental health treatment programs. If the state doesn't want to pay us back for that, there could be costs down the road. It's not significant at all, but there could be some costs down the road that I would approach you guys with and say, hey, we believe this is important. If you guys believe we should get out of the privatization business, then how do you feel about, helping me fund what it would take to do it? But it's clearly not very much money in the scheme of things, but it is definitely more liability for the city to take on.
Okay. Well, thank you. And you've been very gracious, like I said. I think for me, and I'm speaking personally now, I think at the points where I heard that the cost of the financial part is reduced is the point where I jump on. And I think as members of the Minority Caucus, the idea of the plight of people in prison and what happened there, it's not just political for me. I think it's something that is of a very big issue and one that we want to make sure that is rectified. And I think that's where a lot of people jump on it. But I do agree there's a better way to do things, and I wish it was better circumstances. But I'm glad we're moving towards that direction, personally. So thank you, Sheriff.
Councilmember Virtue, is your hand still up from previous, or you have something that you'd like to say?
And I want it to be clear that this caucus supports the sheriff in this effort. Again, we put him in this predicament. So if the sheriff has to come back for whatever amount of supplemental, and share, I don't know if he will, or if he's not, or if he will, if he won't. As a caucus, we need to be ready to stand behind our sheriff for the resources that he's going to need for this to be successful. I just want to make sure that as a caucus, we are all on the same page as it relates to this. He's already mentioned as it related to needing some computers, and I don't know if he's done a deep dive yet as to what it is he's going to need for a complete transfer, or if he's just doing the minimum just to get it up and ready by October. But my point is that I'm trying to make, Madam Chair, is that we just can't be talking just to be talking. When matters like this come before us, we have to be solid on our stances. And if this is the route that the caucus is saying we support, assuming all liability, both legal, operationally, just everything across the board. We also need to have that same stance in ensuring that the sheriff has all the resources so that this transfer and his operations remain successful. I go back to what I've stated earlier, and many of you know we already do this as a government. We tend to ask our agencies to do more with less, especially for those agencies that's servicing people that look like us. So I just wanted to be clear that as a caucus, we make sure that the sheriff gets everything that he needs so that this is successful.
Thank you, Councilmember Virtue. Councilmember Stiles.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you so very much, Sheriff Hall, for joining us this evening. Appreciate it greatly. You mentioned that it would be a small cost in taking on those programs. I know you don't have the specific numbers, but do you have a guesstimate for us to be able to keep in mind?
Yeah, so one of the things that was kind of frustrating about this, just so you know, is we studied the entire operation of what it would take to take it over. Let's say in a formal way, and that number was somewhere around $4 million, one-time startup takeover. And just so you know, the reason that is CoreCivic's been in operation for 25 years. The furniture, for example, they're required to buy their own furniture, buy their own computers, buy their own stuff. Basically, anything under $50,000 is the contractor's responsibility. So if they wanted to be, let's just say, hard-headed, they could pack all that stuff up in a truck and drive it away. And the first day of operation, we wouldn't have a computer and furniture, and there's all sorts of other things. So that's really what we're talking about. It's a very hard number for me to give you tonight, because what I'm asking of them is, what do they want for the furniture, for the computers, for the things that are on site? And then the county would be paying a depreciated value of that equipment and so forth. So I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of less than $4 million, the one-time cost. But just so you know, those are items that then Metro would own. We're not just paying CoreCivic, we're buying the product of the equipment that they have on site.
Okay, and in terms of the programs that are being offered, such as the drug, and what has that cost been that we've been reimbursed for?
It's a great question. So, and maybe it went out on me a little bit where I am, so maybe I missed the part. Here's the programs I was talking about. So, a DUI, a DUI is a local misdemeanor charge. And so we have the largest licensed alcohol and drug treatment program in the state of Tennessee in our facility. Okay, so those are licensed people providing drug and alcohol treatment for anyone who gets a DUI. Well, once you get a felony sentence, that's not a DUI. And what the state doesn't want to do is to pay for some of those local responsibilities, that program that provides drug and alcohol treatment. So for example, let's say we had 30 beds in our treatment program. What the state doesn't want to do is to pay for us to allow people to live, sleep, function in our program, because that is a misdemeanor sentence, the county's responsibility. And so the only reason I bring that up is when we show them what our cost to run the building is, they're going to make sure that we do not move local charges or local programs into the state's payment category. So it's just, I have trouble telling you exactly what the dollars are, but I promise you we're getting there. And I look today, we're working very hard on really nailing down what it is. I mean, a simple way of thinking about it is our local tax dollars pay for people who go to local facilities. And so my job has been historically to make sure those people who are in custody are receiving the programs and treatment, mental health and alcohol and drug and so forth that we believe are important with the dollars that you give me as the sheriff. The difference is you're not giving me any money to run that facility. And so what's about to happen is that's state money to run that facility as we start. And so what's interesting is they don't want us to be providing the programs that you give me money to go for Metro people and allow the state to participate and then bill the state for it. So I know that sounds like a lot of math, but that's what I'm trying to separate. I believe they deserve the same treatment programs that we're giving our population. We just got to figure out exactly what the cost will be. I do not think it's substantial, but it's something to think about.
Thank you. That actually was helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Stiles. Not seeing anyone else in the queue. It's just a comment that I would like to make, Sheriff, because I do support you and support the work and the effort, but it does concern me because we don't know what we don't know. And for you to want to have this opportunity to come a year and a half from now, and now you've got to do it in 3 months, 87 days, really does concern me when initially it was going to take you a year and a half to prepare and have this transition. Just like the pandemic, you're talking about volume that you are not used to dealing with. You've got 31 employees and 200 inmates who now have that. that's going to be 10 times as many on that, core civic level. So those kinds of issues concern me. And for me to really understand and feel good about what it is, the decisions that I make, I want to understand. We went with core civic 25 years ago. What was the basis of that? And now 25 years later, we are not. So all of those things are concerning to me that I would like, and I do have some concerns from the local to the state level because there's always a disconnect, it seems, for us and them. So I just want you to be, thinking of those things and mindful as we move forward, because I know now we have no choice other than unless there's a way that there can be some renegotiations with Core Civic.
Well, I appreciate you very much in saying that. And look, I brag about this all the time. I have the best staff in the whole country doing what they do. And by the way, the most racially diverse organization in the entire metro government. I think it was Councilmember Porterfield who asked. I can't wait till someone asks. We didn't start yesterday. We believe in diversity as part of our mission statement. It was there 20 years ago. So I'm very proud of who runs the organization. It's not me. And but they're very good at what they do. Unfortunately, what's frustrating is they deserve the time to do it the right way. And I've got them working their tail off right now to make sure this thing works. Unfortunately, sometimes these decisions are made the wrong ways. And I'm disappointed in that. I feel like my job is to kind of make sure they have what it takes, a lot of pride on the line. We will make it work. But they deserve a lot of credit. They're working their tail off right now. We have the most people in the whole organization of government involved with COVID because of the line of work we're in, and they've got that to worry about. Now we're taking on another challenge, but we'll make it happen. I appreciate the support for anyone who will at least listen to the challenges. It's a tough situation. And then I think once we get in the building, I hope you guys, all of you, will come out, see the facilities and see what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people an opportunity to change their life. We're the only organization you'll ever meet that's trying to put ourselves out of a job. We believe people shouldn't be in jail and prison, and we're trying to give them a chance to get out of doing that. So hopefully you'll find that to be true.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move on with our agenda. Councilwoman Virtue, the Budget Committee report. Do you have anything that you'd like to report at this time?
Just wanted, I didn't get any feedback. Was wanting us to have a separate meeting so we can continue the oversight for the approved budget. It goes to what Councilwoman Porterfield asking about the Metro employee data, the org charts.
Mm-hmm.
All that information was requested during budget. So I went back and scrolled through my emails. Councilwoman Stiles sent some of that information out to caucus members. Also, I believe I sent out the report from Human Resources as well too. And to the sheriff's point, every year I've been on council, he stated his diversity, and those are questions that we ask of various departments during budget hearings as well too. This budget cycle, it was not included in part of the questionnaires, but in past budget cycles, that information was disseminated to council members. For the budget committee, again, this was the first that the caucus has ever done it. This will be the first that the caucus continues to do the year-round oversight of the budget as well too. And I say that to say with the approved budget, there's padding in the budget that authorizes certain spending that doesn't have to come back before the council. One, because the budget is already approved and those allocations are already in the budget. So I think it's prudent upon us to continue to track those allocations. Case in point, the the debacle as it related to General Hospital and their allocation of COVID dollars. Madam Chair, if you can remember when we were going through our last Budget and Finance Committee meeting, the questions that I was asking as it related to all agencies for COVID dollars, and we received the response that the administration is updated on all COVID allocations.
Right.
And that's why I made the point that no one can ever say in government that they don't know something. Because of that, I feel it's very prudent that we make sure that we're continuing our oversight, because the conversations for the next budget has already begun. Thank you, Madam.
I think that's very appropriate. And what I would suggest is that you provide with us with 2 or 3, your budget committee, 2 or 3 dates and times for meetings, and then you can share that time with the rest of the caucus, and those who want to attend can. But I would encourage you to move forward with having the budget committee meeting, so there can be continued activities.
Roger
So
that,
thank you.
Chair. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Sepulveda, how are you today?
Sorry, I'm okay. Let's see, we have, one second, $5,641.74 in the bank. I have received um, dues from both um, Chair Hurt and Councilwoman Swara. Those are the only dues I have received thus far. I do think we need to have a conversation, Madam Chair. I need to get a handle on my schedule and actually um, get a couple of things off of my plate for my health. And so um, I think that it comes at a bad time, seeing that we might have to vote for a new secretary as well. But I think I'm not in a position where I can do all of the responsibilities I need to do. So I don't know if that's a conversation we need to have at a different time. But I just wanted to put that on your radar.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would just like to take the time to encourage all of our caucus members to make sure that they do get their dues paid up in order for us to have the activities and do the things that we've done. It's going to be necessary for us to have some capital operate out of. And I'm so glad that you made the sacrifice to attend the caucus meeting, Councilmember Sepulveda, and praying and wishing you a full recovery, and just want you to know we are certainly concerned, and we do understand the overwhelming feelings as well as the overwork that you've been having to put in over these last few months. So yes, we can talk later, but we appreciate all that you've done so far. Any questions or comments for the budget or the treasurer's report? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go over the demands that the Minority Caucus made with the mayor's office. Those were 5 things: the body cameras, which we know that they did have deployment for those, the communications and more engagement with the community oversight office, with the mayor's office, as well as Chief Anderson's office, and the communications with the Minority Caucus. So I do know that I've had more participation in conversations with the mayor's office, but as a minority caucus, having representation from the mayor's office, attending the minority caucus meetings, and there being some true engagement of minority caucus conversations as it relates to those issues that concern us, I think are still lacking. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to manage this as we go forward. I know, Councilmember Virtue, you've been in contact with the finance office in terms of chief diversity officer and the positions that we had suggested. But I wanted to see if there were any suggestions, as well as the EBO. All of these things are follow through efforts that need to be made that comes directly from the office. And I understand that we've had these two major occurrences, but I would think that there should be some acknowledgement on behalf of the mayor himself to written documentation that we've provided to him, as well as a follow-up with some of his staff. While we've had follow-up from staff, I am still yet to receive anything in writing from the mayor in regards to him acknowledging and having any approach that he wants to take moving forward. I still see Councilmember Virtue and Councilmember Styles' hands up. Are you all up to make a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, this Councilwoman Virtue on your comment as it relates to the demands to the mayor for the minority caucus. I think we are at a point where the mayor needs to come and have a conversation. The mayor, not a representative of the office, the mayor, come and have a conversation with the caucus, so that we can hear what his priorities are as it relates to the minority community, and how do we move forward in his administration's willingness and collaboration to ensure that his office is meeting our stated priorities. I tell you, I was really disheartened with the accusation as it related to General Hospital and their COVID dollars. And Madam Chair, we've been having this battle since we've been on council, and before council, and other councils. I believe Senator Gilmore stated at one of the forums we were in some years ago, this was a battle when she was on council. So I think we are beyond the fact of continuing to send communications to this administration. I think our next request should be to ask this mayor to come before this caucus so we can have a candid conversation as it relates to his minority Black agenda for the city.
Thank you. I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And we can ask specifically for a meeting with the mayor and ask that he address the caucus as a whole. So I am all for that. I know Ms. Hayes Shacklet is still on the line with us. So I will get with her after the meeting later this week, and we can put some type of letter together to the mayor asking for a specific meeting. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I would also ask that once that letter is drafted, if we can provide a timeline for response.
Okay.
And I both know how that works. It'll just be out there in limbo. We provide a timeline of response from this administration, and no response, then we have our answer, and then as a caucus, we can move forward accordingly with our agenda. But Madam Chair, we've been addressing this since this term with this administration. So I don't know about your patients, but considering everything that we're dealing with in the city and the disparities that's even more exacerbated now, we need more action and less bloviating. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. You're right, because I've actually received additional phone calls in regards to the equal business opportunity legislation. I had a meeting with some young men last week asking specific questions as it related to minority contracting. So those things are very important. And to very much like you, I was concerned about the way things were handled with Nashville General Hospital. So we will become a little bit more proactive and aggressive with asking the mayor for response and timeline. Thank you so very, very much. Anyone else? I see there's a hand, Christopher Wood.
Yes, thank you. This is Christopher Wood, the Director for the Office of Minority and Women Business Assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I caught my volume went out, so I was trying to see if there's anything that I can follow up on and address related to the Equal Business Opportunity Program, and any like specific questions if that you received. If you want to get with me, I can try to answer some of those from our office, what we're trying to do.
Yes, well, good. I'm so glad that you were on the call. I didn't realize, I remember your face from the event with the Nashville Hispanic Chamber a couple of weeks ago, and the presentation that you made with that. And I just did not recognize the name as I saw it up. And we have several guests on the call today, so please pardon me for not recognizing you earlier. But we will talk with you in regards to that as well. One thing I can tell you is that there was a question about the implementation plan for EBO, which I know that there are recommendations and things that are already within the legislation that allows for those things, but very much like responding to the response from the mayor, we probably need some timelines and when we can see those tangible things taking place for minority contracting. So we will talk a little bit later. Yes.
All right, thanks.
Councilmember Suara?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I was not going to do an update or talk about it, but since this is part of the conversation, I wanted to let you know that part of the things that I'm working on is actually looking at our purchase policy. And I've already started working with John Cooper and then Mr. Hernandez and all of them. Part of the thing with the EBO also is that there were supposed to be changes to the purchase manual. I believe it was supposed to be in February to detail some more stuff, but because of COVID, they've not done that. So I'm following up with them on that, and I want to make sure that the manual is completed and updated,
Right.
and then we can go into the enforcement. But I will. Somebody was asking if I was going to update the caucus, but because I did not have all of that together, that's why I did not bring that. But I'll be more than happy at our next meeting, and I'll be glad to talk to Mr. Wood too. On what I've done so far and where we are and what's happening with that work.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. I think that'll be a good conversation too for the budget committee when you all meet. So thank you very much. Councilmember Druffel, thank you very much for your patience in being here. Councilmember Druffel had requested to come and speak before the Minority Caucus. And I wanted to give him the opportunity to present an idea that he had or an effort, an initiative that he'd like to pursue along with the support of the Minority Caucus. Councilmember Druffel, you have the floor. Councilmember Druffel? You have the floor. You want to unmute?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm usually pretty good at it. Thanks, Madam Chair and caucus. As background, about 40 years ago, I had the opportunity to manage a housekeeping department of 200 and some employees. And during that process, I came from a small town, got to know a lot of employees, and sort of got a sense of the differences that we have, and got pretty sensitive. And since then, I've worked as a big brother with inner city kids and at-risk kids for the last 40 years in San Francisco, Chicago, and LA and Atlanta and here. That's just background so that I yet have some understanding. I worked with social workers and some of the highest at-risk kids. Just so you know, I don't propose that I understand everything, but that I have some understanding of what I call bubble. There's people that have a bubble where, and some of the people, my friends, they don't see that the poor, and they don't understand some of the realities. And so, how do we sort of bridge those two bubbles with people that don't really have or don't make as much effort to understand? So my intent here is, as leaders in our neighborhood, is there some way that we can sort of build those bridges? What I found is that a lot of times it comes from relationships. That those relationships then help sort of gravitate or energize us to do more things than we normally would. So I have no, I just want to open an agenda or a possible line of thoughts of working together and coming up with some ideas on how we work together. As Madam Chair, we talked about it. Prayer of St. Francis is absolutely where I am. Seek to understand and be understood. I think as people get to know that and work at it better, we become better as a community. So I don't have all the ideas. I would like to start with some ideas along the way, but I'm looking at, is there an opportunity for us to meet in some fashion to sort of generate some of these bridges so that as leaders in our community, we get to know each other a little bit better and therefore work together closer with some of our problems. Can we have meetings across districts? I'm not that far from a couple of districts. My meetings are, generally white. Yours are generally African American. It doesn't make sense that we don't get to know each other in some fashion. I read the other day, one community said, well, why don't we start going to church together? An African American community, a couple of leaders came over to a different church, and I would be willing to go to an African American church. And as we get to build those bridges, I think we create a better understanding. So I hope you understand my intention. It's not to have all the answers; it's to start building answers, and really working in a human way to try to do that. So I would ask if there's an opportunity to have a separate dialogue that we can start coming up with some action steps. Council Lady Vercher said it right. We need more action. And I think this could be an action that could build some of those bridges. So that is my request and my comments, and I appreciate any thoughts on being able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Druffel, Councilmember Druffel, for your heart and your, I think what it is that you seek to do is very honorable and noble. And I'm just not exactly sure how we would go about doing that. Possibly attending some individual district meetings with individual council members, I think would be appropriate. I know with me being at large, that gives me the wherewithal, but it is a public meeting when council members have community meetings. So maybe that's a start for you to be able to see some of the inner workings and dynamics of working in a community that is different from yours. And then maybe there's some other ways that we will be able to come together and speak as long as we are able to make it public.
I think that's
prior to it.
Councilor, I think that's a start, and I think bringing some of my community leaders with me would be of value, and maybe reversing that at some point. I know it would start slow, and I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it starts sometimes just building relationships, and all of a sudden things can snowball on us, and I think there's just an opportunity here for us to do that.
Right, and I agree. You know, churches, they say that 12 noon on a Sunday morning is the most segregated time in America. But I can tell you, when I was definitely out on the campaign trail, that I visited quite a few churches that were not African American, and even after having gotten elected the first term, I still would show up and go from time to time just to let people know that while I came to ask for a vote, that I was still very much concerned and wanted to be engaged in the community. So I think that's a good start for us to move forward.
Thanks.
Are there any questions?
Sure.
Mr. Wood, I see that your hand is still up. Are you, did you want it to be up? Did you want to have a comment after the conversation that we had with you?
No, it's accidentally up. I'll remove that.
Okay. And I see Councilmember Stiles, your hand is up, and Councilmember Porterfield. In that order, we will hear your questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I'd love to volunteer to speak with Councilmember Druffel and try and come up with some additional ideas as well of how we can best work together. And this is a great start.
I'd love to. I'm open. I think the goal here was to start a dialogue. And like I said, I don't have any answers. I think putting a few of us, as Councilor Hart says, with the right intentions, I just think we have so many passionate, good people that somehow we will come up with solutions as we grow. So I'd love to do that, Councilor Porterfield.
That was actually Councilmember Stiles. Councilmember Porterfield is now up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Porterfield. My bad. Councilor Stiles, ditto. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilman Druffel, for those really heartfelt words. And I've just been very impressed with you since you've been on council. I think that you really do care about people, and I think that that's very evident in many of the conversations I've had with you on the council floor. And I agree that it is very challenging for council members to work together because of the open meetings. I know that Councilwoman Sorora is working on something. She mentioned on the floor before that she's working on something to try to help address some of those concerns. Madam Chair, one thought that I had, and this is something I'm actually trying to work through with the Education Committee as well, but one thought that I had is we may be able to not necessarily share the minutes of the full Minority Caucus meeting, because I don't know that would necessarily be beneficial. But if there is information that we need to share out with the rest of the body, it may be beneficial for us to, if there are some points that we need to share, that we could possibly share with the rest of the body. For example, a few years ago, before I was on council, during the budget hearings, during the MNPS budget hearing, it came out that students didn't have textbooks. And I remember the shock of the council members because, not being in education, they didn't realize that all students don't have textbooks. But for people in education, it is something that we've known for a really long time. And I think that when we wait to budget season to have those conversations, it's harder to get people to understand the necessity when, you're having a conversation all at one time. So trying to figure out how we can work throughout the year about concerns that we have, and just finding a way to share that information under the constraints of the open meetings. So one suggestion would be, again, if we could maybe have like some highlights from our minutes that could be shared through Rosie with the rest of the body. So that's just one suggestion. And again, Mr. Dreffel, thank you for sharing those thoughts with us.
Thanks. Hopefully we can make some progress. But just to add on to your comment, Council Lady Porterfield, I got this right this time. I was talking to Vice Mayor Schulman, and we were talking about how do we create a better dialogue and policy discussion way before the budget, which then becomes our acting priority, really, when you think about it. And so is there an opportunity to create a greater dialogue, whether it's in education or finance, that creates a stronger policy debate, whether it's, how do you balance the police versus social and education? Because it really gets into specifics, and having that policy debate on the floor is very difficult. So one suggestion I would just throw out there that triggered Vice Mayor Schulman and myself was could we get some of our committees create maybe a longer meeting that would bring in speakers and people that would have and generate that policy debate, so we could see some of the positive and negatives of some of the ideas we have. So just an idea that was triggered just a couple of days ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Druffel, and thank you all for your questions for Councilman Druffel. Moving on with our agenda, we have a citizen that I had the pleasure of speaking with, Miss Gracie Gladson, who has joined us. She wanted to make a presentation or a request on behalf of one of her groups that she volunteers for, and her assignment was to address the Minority Caucus. So thank you, Ms. Gladson, for being with us today, and you now have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Greetings, and thank you for allowing me to address you all today at the Metro Council Minority Caucus. I am Grace Gadsden at 5404 Ashlon Drive, 37211. And I'm here to speak of the need to change symbols of intimidation and to institute symbols of need and hope for this era. So 2020 has opened doors of truth through at least two major crises around the world. We know one, the pandemic has revealed disparities of opportunities between the rich and a dwindling middle class and the poor. But the other is the social justice movement that's resurfaced in a major way this year, because, to put it plainly, as we can see by the pleas issued through constant protests, Black people are tired of the racism and brutality, terrorism visited upon our families for hundreds of years here in America. I know I'm preaching to the choir. So what we want to do is reclaim our space and voices to call for justice and equity again. We are reclaiming our health, demanding that the hypertension we feel when we are visibly confronted by vestiges of racist terrorism through monuments we knew 125 or so years ago were placed as reminders of intimidation and to keep Black people in our place, a place of subjugation to those who want times to go back to pre-Civil War status, or, as a lot of people say, the 1950s. A civil war was fought over maintaining the right of the powerful to continue to kidnap and enslave Africans, forcing Africans to unpaid labor for their personal profit. Monuments, statues, sunset laws, the KKK, Jim Crow, and many restrictions were put into place to deny people who had finally cast off the shackles of slavery. Today, we want to finish the job, as you can see by the many protests, of eliminating every single restriction that holds Black people back from equitable treatment in America. Some of our work continues to cast down images and statues that honor people who fought to keep us enslaved 155 years ago. It has always been an insult to Black people and to good people in America. There are no statues of Hitler in public spaces in Germany. To finish the job of eliminating those restrictions and public insults, we have to drive the message in the most physical way we can. We've asked kindly, marched silently, petitioned, negotiated, and so much more to so little avail. We find again that the messaging of protests are helping to give us a space to reveal the injustices that do not seem to be abated. For this moment, to give meaning to the quality of the future I think most Americans want to have, we ask for your support to publish a sign of the times that Black Lives Matter. That message is echoing through protests around the nation and the world. And one of the messages we're finding that uplifts hearts that have needed a boost for dozens and dozens of years is the very visible message on our streets around America. And I ask for your support in our quest to have the lettering of Black Lives Matter placed on a prominent street in large letters in Nashville. The mayor of the District of Columbia showed us the way. The mayor of Los Angeles continued the messaging. And in Nashville, as a venerable leader in the fight for justice during the height of the civil rights era, should also be a leader at this time. So, with that, please help us with the heartfelt message of Black Lives Matter to blaze visibly in the heart of Nashville. The Birmingham Times recently published on June 26th that one of the reasons for that painting is to paint history. One of its residents, Diane Bivens, who's 58, brought her 3 grandchildren, ages 5, 7, and 12, and said that her family's involvement was beyond helping with the paint project. And I quote, she said, "It's so much more than just painting letters. It's reminding the world that Black lives matter too. It doesn't always seem to me that other cultures realize how important our history is or what our forefathers did to pave the way for us. While painting the street, I was thinking about how our forefathers fought for our rights so that we can vote, so that we can live wherever we want, so that our children could get a great education, so that we can be treated with respect. So this is the time where we want to see visible symbols to support a time of ending all the insults and the terrorism that has occurred to Black people. We rose up from the time of George Floyd back in May, and we have to continue this journey. And by peaceful means, this lettering is one of our tools of message. Thank you so much.
You are quite welcome. As I told Ms. Gatson when I spoke with her last week, that I am aware of at least 3 other requests similar to hers that have been made directly to the mayor's office and to the director of neighborhoods. And I'm not sure exactly how far they have gotten. But I do know that there was some talk in terms of where it would be placed, and I even suggested a location on Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, right there at 3rd Avenue in front of the witness walls, knowing that that community was part of the Black community during the times that Ms. Gatson spoke of. So we do, as a minority caucus, believe and we support and advocate that Black Lives Matter in all that we do. And we look forward to seeing how this unfolds. So we would encourage you to keep up your effort and keep up the fight. And we thank you for addressing us today and sharing such eloquent historic information that you've provided. And we certainly appreciate you being here. If you do have more um, unfolding progress, please let us know. And so we will know how we might be able to assist you if we've not heard directly from the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, that is one of the areas where we're hoping for your support is into the mayor's office and whatever departments need to be addressed, but also the public support as well. I did
Right.
not mention that I am associated with various groups. One is the March for Justice. We've held several protests peacefully in the past many weeks. And also, I am newly elected for 2020, the president of the Tennessee Alliance for Progress. So I'm also involved in other things, but right now, I've been an activist for probably 50 years, and I'm tired, and I want to do everything I can right now this year. And so I am talking and throwing out ideas and supporting all the good stuff that we can do. And I hope to work together with all of us to make
Thank
this
you.
a reality this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Before we close out, thank you, Ms. Gladson. I actually got a young man, Mohammed Gure, that was talking to me about the same thing, and he wanted me to actually bring his email. There's an email making the same request to the caucus, but because it did not make it to the agenda, I was just going to talk about it before we close. So I'm glad that I guess a lot of people are working on this. A lot of people want to see this happen.
Right.
And I'm glad that Ms. Gladson was able to get on the agenda and talk to us about it.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you, Councilman.
I've received information from Muhammad. There's another young lady by the name of Sean. And I got your message, and I think it was one other that I received. So there are several different organizations and individuals looking to see if something can happen. And I do know that I spoke directly to Kathy Buggs, the Director of Neighborhoods in the mayor's office.
Good.
And we're just waiting to get some kind of feedback on the progress because she promised to address this issue with the mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And to that point, it leads me to a segue to another request. I received a call this morning from Vanita Lewis,
Okay.
who is out there working with marching and protesting and all of that. And she's concerned because the state troopers are making arrests of a lot of the young folk, and it seems as though that they're harassing people on metro streets, and they need to stop. And she was soliciting the Minority Caucus's help to see could there not be an opportunity for there to be peaceful protests for them and not have to be concerned about the state troopers harassing them. I did tell her that ask for specific request if we needed to provide some type of letter. Did we need a meeting with the mayor? And she said that they were going to request a meeting with the mayor and the governor, and if they could have some representation from the Minority Caucus to attend those meetings, that would be great. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and I told her that I would definitely mention this to the body and put everyone on notice that, and I think the more of us who attend will speak volumes and be stronger. You know, there's strength in numbers when it comes to things like this. So just wanted you all to be aware of that possibility as well. Are there any comments or questions in regards to Ms. Gadson's presentation or the request by Vanita Lewis? Okay, we have, thank you all very much, and thank you again, Ms. Gasson, for your presentation. So we have the election of a secretary. Councilmember Hall had indicated to me after the meeting on Tuesday that he had requested from our council office, Ms. Shacklet, that he be removed from the Minority Caucus. And being that he holds the position of secretary, I didn't know if anyone wanted to step up and in that role, or how you all wanted to handle this situation.
Madam Chair, when are the next round of elections?
Well, they actually are not until 2 years. Each term is a 2-year term in the Minority Caucus. So once there's an election, the seats are held for 2 years, and then the next election on the second half of the term.
Okay, so with that information, I think that it would behoove us to have someone to serve in that role, since it is another year, over a year at this point.
Right.
It may be just my suggestion would be that if anyone's interested, maybe they can let us know to be prepared for the next meeting. That I don't know if anyone knows today that they're ready to step up and serve in their capacity. But if not, maybe they can let us know by the next meeting.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, but also considering that Councilmember Sepulveda intimated that she was basically overcommitted in her jobs and the things that she's doing. So that position for treasurer may also be one that we need to look at in terms of filling on the caucus. I think that her she can still serve on the caucus, but to hold the responsibility of treasurer is just maybe a little bit much for her at this particular time. So we can have those who are interested come back at our next meeting, and I see that Councilwoman Virtue has her hand. You want to make a comment?
Madam Chair, I want to say thanks to the council lady for serving. I'll go ahead and state if there isn't anyone else interested, I will go ahead and reassume that responsibility. We are at a point where we need to be planning for next year's reception.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Virtue. I appreciate that. I know that Councilmember Gamble is not on the call, but I do know that in a couple other meetings that she was very kind to take notes for us. So I will speak to her and see if she's interested in serving as our secretary. Is she the parliamentarian? Does anybody know?
She is.
I believe
She
so.
is, yes.
Mhm. I thought so, but maybe she'll be willing to hold down both of those, considering it's not, the parliamentarian doesn't, have a major active role as we move forward. But if there is someone else interested, please feel free to let us know. And I think that is the end of the agenda. It was a very aggressive and busy agenda tonight. And I thank you all for being on the call and participating, and for all our guests who stayed with us and participated. We certainly appreciate you being with us. Are there any questions or comments from our guests or any council members?
I have one more thing, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I apologize for the delay. I just received this yesterday with COVID-19, I've not been frequenting my mailbox as quickly as I normally would be, but the Minority Caucus did receive a thank you card from the family of Carrie Gentry, and it was in response to the proclamation that
Yes.
Minority Caucus did. And
Mhm.
if it be appropriate, I just wanted to read that thank you card very quickly to the group.
Absolutely.
Okay, the family of Carrie Gentry sincerely thanks you for your thoughts, prayers, hugs, and every other expression of your kindness, concern, generosity, and love that have helped to sustain us during our loved one's illness and at the time of her passing. Words cannot adequately express how much you have lifted our spirits and brought smiles to our faces during this difficult time in our lives. Your thoughtfulness is a gift we will always treasure. Thank you, and may God richly bless you. Most sincerely, Howard and Carol. And there's also a handwritten note that says, "Thank you for the touching proclamation honoring our mother, Carrie Gentry. Your thoughtfulness and kind words meant so much to us, and we are deeply appreciative." So I know that there's a different level of appreciation when it comes to proclamations, and different people feel different ways about it. But one thing that I have seen is that it truly touches the families when we do these things, and that when we acknowledge someone's life, it is something that lasts with their family. So thank you to the Minority Caucus for honoring such a great individual.
Thank you so very much for sharing that. And likewise, although the Minority Caucus, as a caucus, did not necessarily provide support for a student at Tennessee State, but we did on an individual basis, I do want you all to know that we received a thank you card for him, for those individuals who did support the book fund, as he called it, because it was a very great blessing for him to be able to complete his studies at Tennessee State. And I think he received all A's in the semester. So just wanted to thank you all again for your generosity and sowing such great seeds, because they will come back tenfold. If there are no other questions or comments, then we are adjourned.
Great meeting,
Thank you.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you very much.